Good afternoon. It is Monday, June the 20th, about 2:30 p.m. This is Shay Gibson with Weather Flow, bringing you a Chucktown wind report for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week. If you'll notice, I'm wearing the Wind Sports for Wounded Warriors shirt, as the guys are here, the wounded vets are here in town until the 22nd, learning how to kiteboard, and also doing a few other wind and water sports as well. So thanks to Carlos Poisky, the founder of Wind Sports for Wounded Warriors, and Scott Hyland, who is the president of the Charleston chapter out of Sealand Sports. We thank you guys very much and wish the wounded vets the best of luck with everything they're doing. So let's go ahead and talk about our winds and weather for the next few days as we head into a change-up pattern. We had some pretty strong northeast winds over the weekend, and that was due to this large dome of high pressure that was to our north over the weekend that was bringing down that northeast wedge. Now what's happened is it's settled into the south and it's about to break apart. One lobe is going to head out to the Atlantic. The other lobe is going to head down here to the Gulf states and pretty much sit. This one's going to be a little bit weaker down over the Gulf, but the Atlantic high will eventually drift off to the east and get engulfed by a large ridge that's going to be building into the coastline. What that means is our southerly sea breezes are going to be returning tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday and bringing in the heat once again. So as we get in towards Thursday, it looks like our air temperatures may be hitting the 100-degree marks inland. That means heat indices are going to be fairly high, and even along the coastline there won't be a whole lot of relief because our water temperatures will probably climb back up to the 83 to 84 degree ranges. But before we get all into that, let's go ahead and talk about the larger picture here. So here's the GFS model. We're running this from 6 hours, and we can kind of get an idea of what's going on right now as we see that separate lobe of high pressure breaking off along the southeast coast. Our winds right now are southeast, but they could become a little bit more southerly as we head into the evening hours. So what happens with this high is that it continues to fade out to the east. It brings in the southerly flow. We can almost see that other high pressure building down here over these Gulf states, and we should have a weak high building along this area of the northeast Gulf of Mexico. That's usually due to heat flux, and we get a little bit of a high pressure, but that's a help for our sea breezes to build as it provides a westerly flow, clockwise rotation if you remember, that comes up, and sinking air comes down the mountainside. We get some inland troughing, some lee side Piedmont troughing in these areas, which fires off thunderstorms. So we could be looking at that kind of a profile every day this week, where we get this inland storming profile each day that helps with that upper return flow of the sea breeze circulation that brings the wind down over the ocean back into the coastline as the southerly winds come up into the southeast region, and that completes the circulation and increases the winds each day. So that it gets a little complicated to explain the sea breeze circulation, but the bottom line is when we're looking at our Atlantic ridge out here is this giant ridge, and here's the Azores Island. We tend to call this the Bermuda Azores High this time of the year when you get a large area of high pressure built in, and that's what drives these easterly trades across the Atlantic and into the Caribbean and all the way into our coastline. So this ridge is actually going to build if we run this model forward as well. Let me see if I can't get up to running this, and we'll see that this large dome just builds right near the Azores, just west of the Azores, and you can see by Wednesday afternoon 1,032 millibars driving all the way over. The ridge axis extends down into northern Florida, and above that is where our winds become south to south-southwest and southwest up into southeast North Carolina, and that are going to be our larger pattern to drive our sea breezes up. And here you can barely see right here along the edge of the ridge axis is going to be another northeast Gulf of Mexico high that helps out with that westerly upper flow. So we're looking at each day becoming a little bit stronger. So I'm going to go ahead and call for Tuesday. For tomorrow, our afternoon sea breezes could reach 13 to 17 knots. Wednesday, 14 to 18 knots. As we get into Thursday, we might see kind of a repeat of Wednesday, if not a little bit stronger. Let's look at our air temperatures. And here's the steady climb. So we're getting our last day of cool air temperatures in the upper 80s this afternoon. And by tomorrow, with that southerly wind coming up, the more south it becomes, the hotter the air temperature is going to get. By the time we get into Wednesday, we see the south-southwest and southwest flows really drive up that warmer 97 to 98 degree weather into Thursday. Weekend's a little far out, but it looks like by Friday we could be seeing 100 degree or triple digits for our normal highs. Our heat indexes will be much higher than these, or several degrees higher than these for these 4 days right here. So we're looking at some pretty hot weather on the way. Right out west in Phoenix, we hit 120 yesterday from a large ridge out that way. So some hot weather on the way. Let's look at the Charleston area. See what's going on right now. We have southeast winds as that high pressure moves overhead, and we just have sort of a mild to modest true sea breeze 9 knots to 11 or 12 knots. If we look at the modeling for the week, we get an idea of what the GFS model is saying, and we see this afternoon elevation, late afternoon build into about 5 p.m. tomorrow, 13 to 14 knots. As we get into Wednesday, it shows an overnight jetting at about 13, 14 knots. This is what happens overnight, and that's during an inversionary process, or whenever we have some of this lee side or Piedmont troughing inland, sometimes we get an overnight jet, and it's showing that every single night. So I kind of go by the overnight jet, what it typically would show for high wind speeds. Sometimes we can get that in the daytime, so it's a little bit of guidance there. We'll have to wait and see. The GFS is not perfect by any means, but if you look at the NAM 5K, that only goes out for 24 to 36 hours. We see by tomorrow between 3 and 4 p.m., we already see 15 knots gusting to 16 to 19 knots. So there's potential there. That's why I'm saying 13 to 17 knots. The NAM 5 is generally a decent one to go by for sea breezes. That's not the only one that I go for guidance. I usually go by the pattern, but at least you have some opinion there of what's going to be going on. All right, so that'll do it for the Chucktown wind report. Let's go ahead and take a look at the tropics real quick if you want to hang in there and hear this one out. That we have Tropical Storm Danielle, which just forming the Bay of Campeche and making its way onto land in Mexico. Winds are 45 miles an hour, pressure at 1,007 millibars, and it is moving ashore right now, and it's expected to lose its tropical storm status very shortly. One of the main primary threats right now is going to be heavy rains and mudslides in the higher elevations. So here's the rainbow loop of this system. You can see right about here, about where the center of circulation is. It's just now moving ashore, and if we take a look at Datascope again, we can get an idea about where. And that's the satellite version. Let me back out from this. Zoom back out. And hang on, let me take the satellite off so that way we can kind of get an idea. So it looks like this system is making its way into Mexico, right just north of Poza Rica de Hidalgo, and pretty much moving right in between Caño and Hidalgo. So these areas are going to be affected by heavy rains. I think about 5 inches of rains have hit Hidalgo so far, and they could be expecting anywhere from 10 to 15 inches total. So that means flash flooding and mudslides for that area. So keep them in your thoughts. They won't have any direct impacts in the United States. This system will be quickly moving ashore and dissipating, and that'll be our 4th tropical cyclone name of the year. And then the next one, we'll have to wait and see what happens. So until then, I'll be back on probably either Wednesday or Thursday to discuss further plans for the weekend forecast. But until then, thanks a lot for watching and take care.